Welcome to my weird, wonderful world of baking with chickens, where I bake using eggs from my backyard chickens. I'm gonna show you how to make my rose raspberry cake bars. And I have 3 amazing tips for you. 1, how you can use fresh rose petals incorporated into your baking, and how to get soft, fluffy, amazing cake. Plus, how to make a raspberry Swiss Meringue buttercream using freeze-dried fruit instead of fresh, so you don't get that gloopy, fruity mess. That sounds like an infomercial.
Tired of fruity, gloopy messes? Try our freeze-dried worms for a limited time only.
But wait, there's more.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell your friends, and let's go bake, bake, bake. This rose raspberry cake bar is amazing. This is how I want to eat cake. F the fork, f the silverware.
Your first step is you're going to separate the egg yolks and the egg whites. This is one of my secrets. By separating the egg whites, that's how you're going to get a fluffier cake batter. And then you're going to beat the egg whites until they have stiff peaks. And then combine your egg yolks with 1 cup of sour cream. The sour cream is acidic, and that acid is necessary for a reaction with the baking soda and the baking powder to provide that lift that you're going to need to make soft, fluffy cakes. Add a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. Now, cakes made with vegetable oil instead of butter are actually softer and moister. More moist? Moister. That's a weird word. Anyways, add 1 tablespoon of rose water. Now, you can buy rose water, or it's really easy to make at home. I'll show you how.
So to make rose water at home, you see I've used most of mine. It's really easy. All you have to do is get your fresh rose petals, cover it with enough water on the bottom of a pan, and then just boil it. Boil it until you get this consistency. Your petals are going to become translucent and icky looking, and then the color in your flowers will go into your rose water. And you can use this to scent your baked goods. You can use it to spray on your face as a great toner and moisturizer, and it'll keep in your fridge for about a month.
Add 1 cup of your milk of choice. So now in the bowl of your stand mixer, whisk together the 2.5 cups of flour, 2 cups of sugar, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of ground cardamom. The ground cardamom flavor pairs really well with roses. While you could skip this ingredient, I don't recommend it because it's delicious. So after you've whisked your dry ingredients together, on low speed, slowly add your wet ingredients into the dry and beat until they're both well combined. And then stop and scrape down the sides of the bowl as needed so that your batter is nice and incorporated. And here comes the best part of this recipe, fresh rose petals. So I'm gonna pluck these fresh organic rose petals. Organic is important. You don't want flowers that have been sprayed with any pesticides or chemicals. Put them into a colander, rinse them with cold water so that they're nice and clean, and dry them off. And then I'm going to chop them into flowerfetti. Not too fine. You wanna make sure that you can still see them. So it's kind of like funfetti, but flower. So flowerfetti. If you're using dried rose petals, you want 1 cup of chopped dried petals, or you start with 2 cups of fresh petals, chop them into confetti-sized pieces, which will be about 1 cup. Now we're going to add the chopped rose petals into the cake batter. So pick up a handful of those chopped rose petals, add them into the batter, and then you're gonna take your stiff egg whites and then add those into the bowl as well. And using your spatula, gently fold the egg whites and the chopped rose petals into the batter. Now, the reason why we fold is because we don't want to pop any of those air bubbles that we put into the egg whites. So you're just kind of folding the batter a little bit at a time until you don't see any more white streaks from the egg whites. By using this technique, it ensures that we're going to have a nice fluffy cake. Now pick up your sugar, give it a little squeeze, and put it back down. Just kidding, just making sure you're paying attention. This is my cat Sugar. She's cute and fluffy, just like this cake. Line your square cake pans with some parchment paper, and I like to spray it with a little bit of cooking oil so that the parchment paper will stick. And then you're gonna evenly pour the batter into both pans. And then you're gonna pop it into the oven at 350 degrees and bake for about 35 to 40 minutes or until the tops are a light golden brown. When your cakes are done, take them out of the oven and let them cool completely. Lift them out of the pan using the parchment paper and transfer to a baking rack. Now, from my experience, cold cake is easier to slice and to frost. So you could pop them into the fridge or the freezer to chill them as you're making your Swiss meringue buttercream. While the cakes are cooling, it's time to make the Swiss meringue buttercream. Check out my All Things Meringue episode and it'll tell you exactly how to whip it, and there's a tip on how to make Swiss meringue buttercream. For this, it's the same recipe, same technique. You're going to mix in 1 1/4 cups of sugar with a 1/2 cup or 3 large egg whites that are at room temp. You're going to warm it up over a double boiler on the stove until the sugar has melted into the egg whites. And then you're going to pop it into your stand mixer and whisk it until you get stiff peaks. While you're waiting for your meringue to get to stiff peaks, which are going to take about 8 to 10 minutes depending on your weather, now is a good time to pulverize your freeze-dried raspberries. I used 1 bag, which was the equivalent of 34 grams. Now, I'm using freeze-dried raspberries rather than fresh raspberry puree for my Raspberry Swiss Meringue buttercream because I just like how it gives it a vibrant flavor without sacrificing the texture and the structure of the frosting. When you use fresh fruit, there's a risk of kind of creating a frosting soup. And set it aside to add into the meringue later. When your meringue has reached stiff peaks, now is the time to add in your room temp unsalted butter. Slowly add in your butter, about 1 tablespoon chunks at a time, and just toss it in while it's still whipping. The butter will incorporate and mix in, and you're gonna get nice, fluffy buttercream. Then you're gonna add in your freeze-dried raspberry powder. Mix it all together until you get this nice, bright, beautiful pink buttercream. Now it's time to put this big, beautiful cake baby together. Pull your chilled cake out of the fridge and peel off that parchment off of the bottom. And then you're gonna place it back down and taking a big knife, I like to use a big bread knife, slice the top off. You're gonna take off the dome so that you have a flat top on your cake. Slice it a little bit, push it around the sides, and then save that piece of cake for later. Oop, don't forget to take a little piece to taste for yourself. Yum, yum, yum. And then you're gonna slice the edges off. You want a nice square piece of cake. Make sure you save all of those cake pieces because at the end of this episode, I'm gonna show you what we can make with them that I think you'll find is pretty cool. Now you're gonna slice your second piece of cake just like you did the first. Flatten out the top. Trim off the side edges. Don't forget to take a piece for yourself. Now, take about 1/3 of your frosting and spread it all along the top of this square piece of cake. Now you're going to take your second piece and put it on top just like a nice cake sandwich, and then spread another 1/3 of the frosting along the top. Make it nice and smooth. Save 1/3 of your frosting because we're going to use it for the cake scraps that we saved earlier for the project at the end of this episode. Once you're done, pop it into the fridge to chill because cold cake and frosting is much easier to slice. Now we're ready to slice our cake bars. Using a clean hot knife, slice your cake into bars. Now I cut them into 6 pieces, but as you can tell, they're kind of chubby and fat. So you could probably cut them into 8 pieces, into thinner, smaller pieces. Whatever you want, whatever floats your boat. There's no wrong here, but just make sure you have a clean hot knife as it will cut clean and pretty. So I'm pulling a few rose petals off the top here to decorate. I'm just pressing them on top, and there you go. All right, now it's taste testing time.
It's beautiful. This is my cake baby. And you know what? It's cake that you can eat with your hands, which is even better. Because who needs a fork when you can eat cake with your hands? Just put the whole thing in my mouth. It doesn't even fit in my mouth. The raspberry frosting is so tangy and it works so well with the rose. I wish you could taste this. It's so good. I don't really like frosting, and usually I'm the person who like scrapes all the frosting on the side of the plate and doesn't eat it. But this, I'll just eat spoonfuls of it. It's so festive and fun, and I love this big, thick, beautiful pink raspberry meringue. It's so good. I think this is one of the best cakes I've ever made, hands down.
Now, what are we going to do with all of these cake scraps? Well, we're going to make cake in a jar. If you have any mason jars or glass jars of any kind, just stuff some of your cake scraps into the bottom, put a little spoonful of frosting. I'm sprinkling some dried rose petals here to use like sprinkles. If you have any fresh fruit, that'd be great to jam in as well. Put in another layer of cake, another layer of frosting, more sprinkles, put a lid on, and then boom, there you go. You've got cake in a jar to go. You can take it anywhere you want, eat it, and it's a wonderful snack. No cake gone to waste.